I still remember the sound before I remember the words. The scrape of a chair leg against polished wood. The polite cough that followed. And then my daughter-in-law's voice, tight, embarrassed, rehearsed. "Mom, would you mind standing for a bit? Not please sit somewhere else. Not we're short on space. Just that, as if I were an inconvenience that could be folded away." It was Thanksgiving. The dining room smelled like sage and butter, roasted turkey skin crackling under heat lamps, sweet potatoes sweating brown sugar. I had woken at 5 that morning to peel apples for a pie I wasn't even sure anyone liked anymore. My hands still smelled faintly of cinnamon and lemon peel. I wore the blue cardigan I only brought out for holidays, the one with pearl buttons my late husband once said made me look safe. Safe. That word followed me my whole life. The table was full, every chair taken. My son Mark sat at the head, laughing too loudly, a glass of wine already flushed to his cheeks. His friends, his people, filled the room. Business associates, a couple from his gym, a woman I didn't recognize perched far too close to him. Plates clinked, someone turned on music. And I stood there, holding a covered dish like proof I had earned my place. No one met my eyes. Mark didn't look up at all. "Just for a bit," my daughter-in-law Rachel added quickly, her voice apologetic but tired, bone-deep tired. I noticed then how thin her wrists looked, how faint shadows clung beneath her eyes. She had come straight from work, I knew. From one job to the next, always moving. I wanted to say, "It's okay." I wanted to say, "I don't mind." But what I felt instead was something sharper, something cold and sudden, like a glass slipping from numb fingers and shattering before you even hear it fall. I had bought that table. I had paid for those chairs. I had written the check that kept this house from foreclosure 3 years earlier when Mark's temporary setback stretched into 18 silent months. And still, I was the one without a seat. So I stood. I stood against the wall while the turkey was carved. I stood as wine was poured. I stood while Mark raised a toast about gratitude and success and how far we've all come. My feet began to ache. The ache crept upward, a familiar reminder of years spent standing anyway, behind counters, in hospital rooms, in kitchens, long after everyone else had gone to bed. At one point, someone bumped into me, didn't apologize, just shifted their weight like I was part of the furniture. That was when I understood. I wasn't a guest. I wasn't family. I was background. I used to believe love was proven by endurance, by staying, by giving, by absorbing disappointment quietly so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. I raised Mark alone after his father died suddenly at 49. Heart attack, no warning. One moment he was laughing over burnt toast, the next he was gone. Just like that. The house fell silent in ways I didn't know silence could exist. I worked 2 jobs then, cleaned offices at night, bookkeeping during the day. I learned to stretch food, time, and myself. I wore the same coat for 12 winters. I told myself it was fine. Mark never wanted for anything important. Piano lessons, private tutors when he struggled, a car at 16, not new but reliable. I paid his college tuition in full by emptying a retirement account I told myself I could rebuild later. "You're my future," I used to tell him. No, I meant it. When he married Rachel, I was relieved. She was practical, kind, the kind of woman who noticed details, whether someone had eaten, whether a bill was overdue. She worked hard, too hard. I liked her immediately. Mark changed after the promotion. New suits, new friends, a sharper edge to his voice. He began to speak to me the way people speak to customer service representatives, politely but with impatience simmering just beneath. "Mom, you wouldn't understand. Things are different now. This is just how it works." When he told me he wanted a better car, needed one, he said, to match his image, I hesitated. It was expensive, luxurious, more than I'd ever spent on anything not involving survival. "You don't need that," I said gently. He smiled the way he used to when he was a boy asking for something he already believed was his. "It's an investment," he replied, "in my future." So I did what I had always done. I yielded. I bought the car outright. Black leather interior, imported. Quiet as a secret when the door shut. The salesman shook Mark's hand, congratulated him. No one asked my name. The title went in my name, not because I planned anything, but because my accountant insisted. "Just in case," he said. I remember signing the papers. The pen felt heavy. I remember the weight of that decision settling somewhere behind my ribs. At Thanksgiving, the car keys sat on the counter, tossed carelessly among bottle openers and napkins. Mark had driven it there. He always did. Rachel took the bus. I watched her wash dishes while everyone else laughed. I watched Mark disappear into the den with his phone, his laughter low, intimate, unfamiliar. And something inside me shifted. Not anger. Not yet. Clarity. Cold, unmistakable clarity. Later that night, my legs aching, my pride bruised in ways I didn't yet have language for, I gathered my coat. "Already," Mark said, glancing at his watch. "Dessert's not even served." I looked at the apple pie on the counter, the one I had woken early to bake. "That's okay," I said. "I've had enough." He nodded, distracted, already turning away. Rachel caught my arm quietly by the door. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Her eyes shone with unshed tears, not for herself, for me. And that broke something open. "It's all right," I said automatically. Then I stopped. No, it wasn't. I walked out into the cold night air, my breath clouding in front of me. The house behind me glowed warm and golden. Laughter spilled through the walls. I stood on the porch for a long moment before descending the steps. I had given everything to that house, and I had never once been asked to sit. That night, alone in my small apartment, I took off my shoes and noticed my feet were swollen, red, angry. I ran warm water over them and watched the steam rise. And for the first time in decades, I did not tell myself it was fine. Instead, I asked a different question. What if I stopped? Not stopped loving. Stopped yielding. Stopped shrinking. I dried my feet carefully. I folded my cardigan. I placed it on the chair like it deserved respect. And somewhere deep inside me, quiet, steady, patient, something began to wake up. I didn't know yet how it would unfold. I only knew this. That night at the table was the last time I would stand so others could sit comfortably. Invisibility doesn't arrive all at once. It slips in quietly, between thank you that stop coming, between invitations that feel optional, between the way people stop asking how you are and start assuming you'll manage. I had been invisible long before Thanksgiving. That night merely stripped the illusion away. The morning after, I woke before dawn out of habit, even though no one needed anything from me anymore. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant groan of traffic. I sat at the small kitchen table with a cup of weak tea and stared at my hands. They were older than I felt, the skin thin, veins visible, knuckles swollen from years of work. These hands had scrubbed floors, signed checks, soothed fevers, and held a dying man while he took his last breath. They had built a life that no longer seemed to include me. When Mark was young, he used to call me his whole world. He would crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, his small body trembling, and I would wrap myself around him like a shield. I promised him things then, stupid, impossible promises. I'll always take care of you. You'll never be alone. As long as I'm here, you're safe. I didn't realize how literally he would interpret that. As he grew older, my role solidified into something unspoken but absolute. I was the fallback, the safety net, the silent solution. When his rent came up short in his 20s, I paid it without a word. When his credit card maxed out, I transferred funds and told myself it was temporary. When he wanted to start a business and couldn't secure a loan, I co-signed. Each time I waited for the moment when he would stand on his own and say, "Thank you, I've got it from here." That moment never came. Instead, the requests changed shape. They became assumptions. "Mom, I'll need you to handle this. Mom, can you just cover it this time? Mom, you're not really using that money anyway." The first time he said that last part, I laughed. I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. After Rachel entered the picture, the dynamic shifted in subtle ways. She was polite, always, grateful even, but she was tired in a way that went deeper than long hours. She worked 2 jobs, an administrative position during the day and evening shifts at a medical billing office. She carried the household in ways Mark never seemed to notice. Groceries appeared, bills were paid, appointments were remembered. And when Mark wanted something extra, something flashy, it was never Rachel who provided it. It was me. I noticed over time how Mark's affection became transactional, warm when he needed something, cool when he didn't. He stopped calling just to talk, stopped visiting unless it was convenient, stopped asking my opinion altogether. At family gatherings, he spoke over me, corrected me, smiled indulgently when I shared a memory as if humouring a child. "Things were different back then, Mum," he'd say. "You wouldn't understand how it works now." As if the world had suddenly become so complex that decades of experience meant nothing. The first time I felt like furniture was at their housewarming party. I had helped pay the down payment, quietly, discreetly, so Mark could tell people he and Rachel had managed it themselves. I stood near the kitchen, refilling trays, wiping counters, making sure everyone had what they needed. At one point, a woman I didn't know set her empty glass on my hand without looking at my face. "Another," she said, already turning away. I realized then she thought I was staff. I didn't correct her. That's what invisibility does. It teaches you to shrink so others don't feel embarrassed. Rachel tried in her own way. She would text me late at night sometimes. "I'm so tired. I don't know how to make him see. Thank you for helping us. I don't know what we'd do without you." I never responded with the truth. That I was tired too. That I was afraid of what would happen if I stopped. That love, once given freely, is rarely returned the same way. I told her it was fine. I told her I was happy to help. I told her what I had told myself my entire life. One evening, about a year before Thanksgiving, Mark showed up at my apartment unannounced. He looked irritated, distracted. "Mum, I need a favor," he said, not bothering to sit. I waited. "The car," he gestured vaguely. "It's starting to look outdated." Outdated? The word landed heavily. "It's only 2 years old," I said carefully. "Yeah, but things move fast. Image matters, you know that." I did know that. I also knew what he wasn't saying. "I found something better," he continued. "Top of the line. This would really help me." "Help you how?" I asked. "Me?" He sighed like I was being deliberately difficult. "You always do this," he said. "Why do you question me? Haven't I earned your trust by now?" Earned. The word burned. I asked about the cost. He waved it off. "I'll pay you back. Eventually." Eventually had become his favorite word. Against my better judgment, against the quiet voice that had been growing louder inside me, I agreed. Not because I believed him. Because I didn't know who I was if I said no. The dealership smelled of leather and citrus cleaner. The salesman barely acknowledged me. His attention was fixed on Mark, his suit, his confidence. When it came time to sign, I hesitated. "Put it in my name," I said suddenly. Mark looked at me sharply. "Why?" "For insurance reasons," I lied. He frowned, then shrugged. "Fine." I told myself it was nothing. Just paperwork. But something in me knew otherwise. The weeks that followed were a study in contrast. Mark drove that car everywhere. Nightclubs, weekend trips, dinners that Rachel was too tired to attend. He posted photos online, smiled broadly, lived expansively. Rachel took the bus. I noticed how she flinched whenever his phone buzzed, how she avoided his eyes when he talked about work, how often she apologized for things that weren't her fault. Once she came over after a double shift and fell asleep on my couch, still wearing her shoes. I covered her with a blanket and watched her chest rise and fall. She looked so young, too young to be this worn down. I thought of myself at her age. I thought of how quickly a life of giving can turn into a life of disappearing. The night before Thanksgiving, Rachel called me quietly. "He's going out again," she said. "Says it's networking." There was a pause. "I don't think it is." I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. "I'm sorry," she added. "I know you've done so much for us." Something inside me tightened. "Rachel," I said slowly, choosing each word. "When was the last time you rested?" She laughed softly. "I don't remember." That was the moment I understood. June, this wasn't just about me being invisible. It was about a pattern, a system. People like Mark didn't change because they had no reason to. There was always someone else to absorb the cost. And people like me, like Rachel, kept paying it. Thanksgiving stripped away the last of my excuses. Standing there, watching my son toast his success while his wife washed dishes and I clutched a casserole like proof of relevance, I saw my future clearly. More standing. More silence. More giving until there was nothing left to give, and no one noticed when I stopped. That night, alone, I pulled out a file I hadn't opened in years. Receipts, titles, bank statements, legal documents I had tucked away out of habit, not intention. The car titles sat on top. My name printed clearly. I ran my finger over it, feeling the slight indentation of ink. For the first time, the weight of it wasn't abstract. It was real. And with that realization came something else. Not rage. Resolve. I had spent my life protecting others from consequences. I wondered finally, what would happen if I didn't? I closed the file and set it neatly on the table. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent and alive. Inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Or present. I used to know every sound my son made. I could tell whether his footsteps meant hunger, excitement, or trouble. I knew the difference between his mom, when he needed help, and his mom, when he'd broken something and hoped I wouldn't notice. That kind of knowing doesn't disappear overnight. It erodes. Slowly, quietly, until one day you realize you're standing in front of someone who wears your child's face, but none of his softness. After Thanksgiving, Mark didn't call. Not to check if I'd made it home safely. Not to thank me for the pie he never tasted. Not even to ask for something, which, in its own way, felt worse. I saw his life unfold instead through photographs online. Clubs lit in neon. Champagne flutes raised, smiles sharp and polished. The car, my car, featured prominently, its sleek black exterior reflecting city lights like it belonged to a different world entirely. I recognized one of the women in the photos. She was from Thanksgiving, the one who had sat too close. Rachel wasn't in any of them. When I finally heard from Mark, it was 3 days later. "Mum," he said briskly, as if picking up a conversation we'd paused mid-sentence, "I need you to send me the insurance renewal info for the car." No greeting, no acknowledgement, just need. "I'll look for it," I replied evenly. There was a pause. "Is something wrong?" he asked, irritation creeping in. "No," I said, I was just busy." He scoffed. "With what?" The question stunned me. "With my life," I said quietly. He laughed, sharp and dismissive. "Okay, Mom, don't get dramatic." Dramatic? That was new. After we hung up, I sat there holding the phone, staring at my reflection in the darkened screen. My face looked older than I remembered. Not weaker, just sharper, like the edges had finally come into focus. I thought about the boy he had been. The night he came home, crying because kids at school had mocked his thrift store jacket. I stayed up late sewing patches into the elbows, turning old into vintage before that word meant anything. I told him confidence could be learned. The time he failed a math exam and hid it from me for weeks, terrified I'd be disappointed. I hugged him and told him failure wasn't fatal, only refusing to try again was. I taught him empathy. Or at least I thought I did. Somewhere along the way, those lessons had been replaced with others. Lessons about entitlement, about image, about how to extract value without offering anything in return. And I wondered, achingly, how much of that was my fault. I invited Mark to lunch the following week. A neutral place, small cafe, nothing fancy. I wanted to see him clearly without the distractions of his house or his audience. He arrived late, wearing sunglasses indoors, checking his phone as he slid into the chair across from me. "You wanted to talk?" he asked, already half elsewhere. "Yes," I said. "I did." He sighed dramatically. "If this is about Thanksgiving." "It's not," I interrupted. That caught his attention. I folded my hands on the table. The smell of coffee and toasted bread hung between us. "I want to understand something," I said. "Do you think of me as family?" He blinked, clearly unprepared. "Of course I do," he said slowly. "Why would you even ask that?" "Because family doesn't ask someone to stand while everyone else eats." He frowned. "You're overreacting. There weren't enough chairs." "There were," I said. "You just didn't think to give me one." Silence stretched. He leaned back, crossing his arms. "You've always liked playing the martyr." The words hit harder than I expected. "I've sacrificed for you," I said carefully. "Willingly, joyfully. But that doesn't make me disposable." He scoffed. "No one said you were disposable." "You didn't have to," I replied. "You showed me." He rolled his eyes. "Look, Mom, you're from a different generation. You don't get how things work now. We're busy. There's pressure. You can't expect to be the center of everything." The center. I wasn't asking for the center. I was asking for a chair. I looked at him then, not as my son, but as a man, and saw something unsettling. He wasn't cruel. He was indifferent. And indifference, I realized, was far more dangerous. That afternoon, Rachel called me. Her voice was low, exhausted. "He didn't come home last night," she said. I closed my eyes. "Did he say where he was going?" "No, he just said he had work things." I hesitated. "Rachel, is he still using the car I bought?" "Yes," she said softly. "Every day." There was a pause. "Why?" I exhaled slowly. "No reason," I said. "I just wanted to know." After we hung up, I sat at my desk and pulled out the file again. I added up numbers I had never wanted to see together. The rent payments, the credit card bailouts, the business loans, the down payment, the car. It was more than money. It was years. Years of deferred dreams, years of saying later to myself. And Mark, my son, stood on top of all of it, convinced it was solid ground he had built himself. That was the moment something inside me hardened, not into bitterness, but into truth. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's surrender. The final straw came unexpectedly. I received a call from my bank. "Mrs.," the woman said politely, "we noticed some unusual activity on your account." My heart skipped. What kind of activity? There were multiple attempts to access funds using an authorization code you haven't used in years. I knew immediately. Mark had tried to move money without asking. Again. "I didn't authorize anything," I said firmly. "Thank you for confirming," she replied. "We've frozen the attempts." When I hung up, my hands trembled, not with fear but with a strange, exhilarating clarity. This wasn't carelessness. This was entitlement, escalating into assumption. I thought of Rachel, working herself to exhaustion, believing she was part of a partnership. I thought of myself, standing at a table I paid for, being told to wait my turn. And I thought of the car. The one symbol Mark cherished most. The one thing that made him feel powerful. I didn't feel angry. I felt ready. That evening, I called my accountant, then my lawyer. I didn't explain everything. I didn't need to. I simply asked questions. Careful ones, legal ones, the kind that turn emotions into strategy. As I hung up the phone, I looked around my quiet apartment. For the first time, it didn't feel small, and it felt intentional. And somewhere in the distance, I could almost hear the sound of a clock shifting, slowly, deliberately, into my time. Rachel never complained the way people expect someone drowning to complain. There were no dramatic ultimatums, no slammed doors, no public scenes. She just adjusted. Adjusted her sleep around double shifts, adjusted her expectations downward, adjusted her voice so it never rose high enough to be accused of nagging. I recognized it instantly. Because it was the same way I had survived my marriage after Mark's father died, quiet endurance dressed up as strength. The first time I truly saw Rachel was the night she showed up at my apartment with a grocery bag and nowhere else to go. It was nearly midnight. When I opened the door, she stood there with damp hair pulled into a messy knot, dark circles bruising her face, the bag cut into her fingers. I didn't know where else to go, she said. I stepped aside without asking questions. She set the groceries on the counter automatically. Milk, eggs, bread, like muscle memory, demanded usefulness even in crisis. Then she just stood there, staring at the floor. I worked a double, she said softly. Came home and he was gone. Again. I poured tea. Chamomile. The same one I drank when my husband was sick, and the doctors used careful voices. Rachel wrapped her hands around the mug like it might anchor her. I think there's someone else, she whispered. I didn't pretend surprise. What makes you think that? I asked gently. She laughed, short, humorless. He smells different, like perfume that isn't mine, and his phone, it's always face down now. She took a shaky breath. And the car, he treats it like it's sacred. The word landed heavy between us. Sacred. That car was more than transportation to Mark. It was proof, status, escape. It's ridiculous, she continued quickly. I shouldn't care about a car. It's not about the car, I said. She looked up at me then, eyes glassy. No, she said. It's about respect. Something in her voice cracked open, something in me, because she was right. And because she didn't know yet how deeply entangled that car was in the quiet architecture of Mark's power. Rachel slept on my couch that night, curled in on herself like she was trying to take up as little space as possible. I sat at the table long after the apartment went still, listening to the hum of the city, replaying moments I had dismissed before. Rachel covering bills Mark forgot. Rachel apologizing for his lateness. Rachel thanking me for things he never acknowledged. I realized something then that made my stomach twist. Mark didn't just take from me. He took from her too. The difference was, she was still paying with her body, her time, her youth. I was paying with my past. The next morning, Rachel left early for work. Before she went, she hesitated by the door. Thank you, she said, for letting me stay. You never need permission here, I replied. She nodded, but I could see she didn't quite believe it. That afternoon, I ran errands I'd been putting off. At the bank, I updated security measures. At my lawyer's office, I reviewed documents I had signed years ago without fully considering how they could be used. The leather chair creaked softly beneath me as I listened. You retain full ownership, my lawyer said calmly. You've been generous, but generosity isn't the same as obligation. That sentence stayed with me. Generosity isn't obligation. I walked out into the crisp air feeling lighter, not because anything had changed yet, but because I finally understood the rules of the game I had been playing blind. That evening, Mark called. "Why is Rachel staying with you?" he demanded. I leaned against the counter, phone cool in my hand. "She needed rest," I said. "You're interfering," he snapped. "This is between us." "It stopped being just between you when she started working 2 jobs to support your lifestyle," I replied evenly. There was a stunned silence. "You're turning her against me," he said. "No," I said. "I'm giving her somewhere to breathe." His voice hardened. "You need to stay out of my marriage." I smiled sadly. "You stayed in it when you let me pay for everything," I said. "You don't get to draw boundaries now." He hung up. Over the next few weeks, Rachel confided more. How Mark dismissed her exhaustion. How he mocked her for not keeping up. How he said she should be grateful because other women wanted him. She said it quietly, as if repeating his words made them less real. I listened. And with every story, something inside me settled into place. This wasn't about revenge. It was about balance. Truth has weight, and once you start letting it rest where it belongs, things shift. One night, as Rachel and I folded laundry together, she paused. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." "Why does he listen to you sometimes?" she said slowly, "but never to me?" The answer came too easily. "Because he learned early that I would absorb the cost," I said, "and he expects you to do the same." Her hands stilled. "I don't want to disappear," she said. Neither did I. That was when I told her, carefully, deliberately, one small truth. "The car he drives," I said, keeping my voice neutral, "is in my name." She stared at me. "What?" "I bought it," I said. "Legally, it's mine." Her mouth opened, then closed. "He treats it like it's his life," she whispered. I nodded. And in that moment, I saw something shift in her posture. Just slightly. Not hope. Possibility. I didn't tell her what I was planning. Not yet. But I knew with sudden certainty that when the moment came, she wouldn't be standing alone. That night after Rachel went to sleep, I took out the spare key to the car. It was cool and heavy in my palm. I turned it slowly, listening to the faint metallic click, and I understood something fundamental. Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits patiently in a drawer until the person holding it finally decides to stand. The call came at 11:47 p.m. I remember the time because I'd just turned off the lamp beside my bed. The room was quiet in that way only late nights manage, heavy, almost expectant. My joints ached pleasantly from a day well spent, and for once my mind wasn't racing. Then my phone vibrated against the wooden nightstand. Unknown number. I considered letting it go to voicemail. At my age, calls that late usually meant emergencies or mistakes. I picked up anyway. "Hello?" There was music in the background, loud, thudding bass that rattled through the speaker. Laughter, male voices shouting over one another. Then Mark's voice. Slurred, impatient, annoyed. "Mom," he said, dragging the word out. "You need to come get me." I sat up slowly. "Where are you?" "A club," he said. "Downtown, the valet won't release the car." The word car snapped me fully awake. "Why not?" He exhaled sharply. "Because they say it's reported stolen." Silence flooded my chest, not panic, not fear. Stillness. "I see," I said. "Fix it," he snapped. "Right now. I've got people waiting." People, Carl. Women, I thought. "What exactly do you want me to fix?" I asked. "You know what I mean," he said. "Call them. Tell them it's a mistake. You always overreact." Overreact. The word felt almost ceremonial this time, like a bell ringing to mark the end of something. I didn't overreact, I said calmly. I acted. What does that mean? His voice sharpened. It means the car is mine, I said, and it was taken without my consent. His laugh was ugly. Oh my God, he scoffed. You're being ridiculous. I'm your son. And I'm the legal owner, I replied. The bass thumped harder through the line. Someone shouted his name in the background. You can't do this, he hissed. Do you know how embarrassing this is? I closed my eyes. I thought of Thanksgiving, of standing by the wall, of Rachel washing dishes while he toasted himself. Yes, I said, I do. You did this on purpose, he accused. Yes, I said again. The words surprised even me with how solid it felt. You're trying to control me, he said. No, I corrected gently, I'm stopping. There was a pause long enough for the music to surge and fade. Then his voice dropped. Where's Rachel? He asked. At home, I said, resting. She had no right. She has every right, I interrupted. She works 2 jobs, she pays bills, she's your wife. He swore. You're ruining my life, he said. I almost laughed. No, I said, you just didn't notice who was holding it together. I could hear him pacing now, the echo of a tiled bathroom or back hallway. You need to undo this, he said. Now. I won't, I replied. Then come get the car, he snapped, if it's yours. I smiled. I already have plans for it. What plans? He demanded. You'll find out, I said. I hung up before he could respond. I sat there for a moment, phone still warm in my hand. My heart wasn't racing. It was steady. I dressed slowly, comfortable clothes, sensible shoes. I moved with intention, the way you do when you know every step matters. Before leaving, I knocked softly on Rachel's door. She opened it, hair loose, eyes tired. Is everything okay? She asked. Yes, I said, but I need you to come with me. She hesitated. Where? To pick something up, I said. Something that belongs to me. She didn't ask more. That told me everything about how ready she was for the truth. The city lights blurred past as we drove. Rachel sat quietly, hands folded in her lap. Is it about Mark? She asked finally. Yes. She nodded. I thought so. We reached the impound lot just after midnight. The air smelled of oil and cold metal. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The attendant barely looked at Mark's name when I showed my ID and the title. You're the owner? He asked. Yes, I said. He nodded, already uninterested in the drama behind it. The car rolled forward slowly, sleek and spotless under harsh light. Rachel stared at it. He loves this car, she whispered. I know, I said. I took the spare key from my purse, the one I had held weeks earlier, feeling its weight. I placed it gently in her hand. Her fingers trembled. What are you doing? She asked. I'm giving you transportation, I said, and choice. Her eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but something stronger. Relief. You don't owe him anything, I continued, and neither do I. She looked at the car, then at me. What will he do? She asked. I thought of Mark standing outside the nightclub, image shattered, power stripped, finally forced to feel what it's like to be left without support. He'll have to figure it out, I said, just like we always did. Rachel nodded slowly. She slid into the driver's seat. The engine purred, quiet, obedient, no longer a symbol of arrogance, but of transfer. As she pulled out of the lot, I felt something lift off my chest that I hadn't known I was carrying. That night, my son learned what it felt like to be stranded. And I learned something far more important. Boundaries don't shout. They act. The morning after the nightclub call, I woke before dawn, not from anxiety, but from habit finally shedding its fear. For years, waking early had meant bracing myself for problems that weren't mine to solve. Bills to juggle, apologies to invent, fires to put out before they burned someone else's pride. That morning, the air felt different. Clean. I made coffee slowly, savoring the smell as it filled my kitchen. Dark, bitter, grounding. Outside, the city stretched awake, unaware that something irreversible had already shifted. My phone buzzed. 5 missed calls, 12 messages, all from Mark. I didn't open them. Instead, I sat at the table and opened my folder, the one that had waited patiently for years. The papers inside were neatly organized, edges aligned like soldiers standing at attention. Ownership documents, bank statements, loan agreements, receipts with dates and signatures that told a story no one could argue with. This wasn't anger. This was arithmetic. At 9 sharp, I was in my lawyer's office. She greeted me with the same calm professionalism she always had, but there was a glint of approval in her eyes as I laid the documents across her desk. "You're ready," she said. "Yes," I replied. "I am." We went through everything methodically. The car, reclaimed and reassigned. The loans, called in, legally and cleanly. The accounts, secured, access revoked. Each decision felt strangely unemotional, no trembling hands, no second guessing. Just clarity. "You understand," my lawyer said carefully, "that this will feel sudden to him." I smiled faintly. "It will only feel sudden because I've been silent for so long." She nodded. "And the house?" she asked. That question sat heavier. The house had always been the illusion. Mark spoke of it as his kingdom, his achievement, his proof of arrival. He forgot, or chose to forget, that when foreclosure loomed, it was my funds that filled the gap, that the deed carried my contingency clause, that the safety net he strutted across was one I had woven carefully, thread by thread. "I want my name recognized," I said, fully. She tapped her pen. "That will change things." "Yes," I said. "That's the point." Mark showed up at my apartment that afternoon. Unannounced. Furious. I saw him through the peephole, jaw tight, posture aggressive, entitlement radiating off him like heat. I opened the door calmly. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he shouted. I stepped aside, letting him enter. I didn't offer him a seat. He noticed. "You humiliated me," he said. "Do you have any idea?" "I stood for years," I said quietly. "You survived one night." He scoffed. "You're punishing me." "No," I replied. "I'm correcting a pattern." He paced the room like a trapped animal. "You gave that car to her," he said, venomous. "She's turning you against me." I laughed softly. "She didn't have to," I said. "You did that yourself." "You owe me," he snapped. "Everything I have is because of you." "Yes," I agreed. "And that's exactly why this stops now." He froze. "What do you mean?" I handed him a folder. Inside were copies, only copies, of the documents. His eyes scanned them, color draining from his face. "You can't," he started. "I can," I said, "and I have." His voice dropped. "You wouldn't ruin your own son?" I met his gaze steadily. "I'm not ruining you," I said. "I'm letting you meet yourself without my shadow." Silence swallowed the room. "You'll regret this," he said finally. I nodded. "Perhaps." But even as he stormed out, I knew something he didn't. Regret feels very different when you're finally standing on your own feet. That evening, Rachel came home, exhausted, but lighter. She set her bag down and leaned against the door. "He called me," she said. "I expected that." "He blamed me," she continued. "Said I was stealing from him." I smiled sadly. That's how people react when the well runs dry. She hesitated. "What happens now?" I considered the question carefully. "Now," I said, "you decide what your life looks like when you're not carrying someone else's weight." She nodded, eyes thoughtful. Later, after she went to bed, I sat alone and reflected. not on Mark's anger, but on my own stillness. I had always believed love meant endless accommodation. I was wrong. Love without boundaries rots into resentment. Support without limits becomes exploitation. And dignity, once reclaimed, does not ask permission to stay. The storm had passed. What remained was quiet. And in that quiet, I felt something unfamiliar and precious. Control. The truth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it walks into the room carrying paperwork. The first public crack appeared 3 days after Mark stormed out of my apartment. I was in the grocery store comparing prices on apples. Old habits die hard, when my phone lit up with a message from a number I didn't recognize. "Is it true you own the house?" I stood there, cart half full, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I didn't reply. By the time I reached the checkout, there were 3 more messages, then a call. I let it ring. That afternoon, the illusion Mark had built for years began to unravel, not because I shouted, but because I stopped covering. The bank letters went out first. Formal, neutral, unemotional. They didn't accuse, they simply stated facts. Revised ownership, acknowledgements. Loan recalls. Updated liability structures. Language doesn't need venom when it carries authority. Mark's business partners noticed quickly. The next call I answered came from a man who had never learned my name before. "Mrs.," he said cautiously, "there seems to be some confusion about Mark's financial backing." "There's no confusion," I replied. "Only correction." A pause. "So the capital was mine," I said, "and is no longer available." By evening, Mark's phone calls resumed, this time frantic. "You're destroying everything," he shouted when I finally answered. "No," I said calmly. "I'm letting the truth breathe. You're embarrassing me in front of everyone." I thought of Thanksgiving again. Of standing. Of silence. "I survived embarrassment," I said. "You'll survive accountability." Then I hung up. The real checkmate came a week later. Rachel didn't plan it. Neither did I. It happened because lies collapse under their own weight. Mark had always presented himself as self-made. Interviews, panels, social media posts dripping with confidence, and vague references to early struggles. Someone, one of his associates perhaps, did what ambitious people eventually do. They checked. Public records are merciless. The house deeds surfaced first, then the loan guarantees. Then the car, photographed, tagged, and suddenly reassigned. A post appeared online, then another. "Did you know Mark doesn't own his house? Apparently his mother financed everything. Isn't the car in his wife's possession now?" Speculation turned into confirmation. Confirmation turned into judgment. Mark showed up at my door again, but this time he looked smaller. Not defeated. Exposed. "They're laughing at me," he said hoarsely. "You could fix this." I studied him carefully. "No," I said. "You could have." He dropped into a chair, head in his hands. "For years," he muttered, "I thought you needed me." The confession startled us both. "I needed to feel important," he admitted, "and you made it easy." I felt the sting, but also the release. "That was my mistake," I said, "and I've corrected it." He looked up, eyes red. "What do you want?" he asked. "Money? An apology?" I shook my head. "I want you to leave," I said, "and I want you to learn how to stand without leaning on women who disappear so you can feel tall." He left without another word. The fallout was swift. Mark's business partnerships dissolved quietly. No drama, just distance. Invitations stopped, the clubs moved on to newer faces. The house, my house, was sold under terms that ensured fairness, not rescue. Rachel watched the process with a calm I admired. One evening, as we sat together on the balcony of a small apartment she had rented in her own name, she spoke softly. "I filed for separation," she said. I nodded. "How do you feel?" "Tired," she said, "but honest." She turned to me. I don't know who I'd be without what you did. I met her gaze. You would still be you, I said. I just removed the weight. Mark left the city soon after. But no dramatic goodbye, no reconciliation speech. Just absence. Funny how people who demand the most space vanish when they're no longer the center. Weeks later, I sat alone in a new home. Smaller, quieter, entirely mine. I baked a peach cobbler just because I wanted to. The smell filled the kitchen, warm and sweet, curling into corners that held no old expectations. I ate it at the table. Sitting. No guests. No apologies. No permission required. I thought about everything I had lost and everything I had reclaimed. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it signs papers, hands over keys, and walks away without looking back. That was my checkmate, not because I won, but because I finally stopped playing a game designed for me to lose. The downfall didn't arrive with sirens or headlines. It arrived with silence. Mark's name stopped circulating. The invitations dried up. His social media, once a steady stream of polished success, went dark. No announcements, no explanations, just absence, like a light switched off in a room no one bothered to enter anymore. At first, I waited for the guilt. For years, I had been trained to expect it, to feel responsible for any discomfort that followed my decisions. But it didn't come. What came instead was a strange, steady quiet. The kind you don't realize you've been craving until it wraps around you and refuses to leave. Rachel moved into her own place across town, a modest apartment with big windows and no ghosts. I helped her choose furniture, not based on image, but comfort. We laughed over mismatched chairs and crooked picture frames. I've never chosen anything just because I liked it, she said once, running her hand over a couch that wasn't expensive, just soft. That's how it starts, I told her. She found a new rhythm, cut back to one job, slept, smiled more easily. Her shoulders dropped inch by inch like she was finally allowed to take up space. One evening, she asked me something unexpected. Do you miss him? She asked gently. I thought about it. I miss who I thought he was, I said, not who he chose to become. She nodded. That makes sense. The social shunning was subtle but thorough. People who once praised Mark's ambition now spoke carefully of misrepresentation. The same men who clapped him on the back suddenly remembered prior commitments. I heard bits and pieces through channels I hadn't known existed. A deal that fell through. A lease that wasn't renewed. A request for capital that went unanswered. None of it dramatic. Just gravity doing what gravity does. Once, months later, I ran into him by chance. A coffee shop near my new place. He looked older, not aged, worn. The arrogance had faded, replaced by something brittle. He saw me, hesitated, then approached. Hi, he said. Hello, Mark. We stood there awkwardly, strangers bound by history. I'm trying to start over, he said finally. I nodded. That's good. I didn't realize, he said quietly, how much you were holding up. I studied his face, searching for sincerity. I believe you, I said. Now. He swallowed. I'm sorry. The words were small, but real. I accept your apology, I said, and I release myself from fixing what comes next. We parted without tears. That felt right. The peace that followed wasn't loud or triumphant. It was deliberate, seen. Mornings with sunlight and unhurried coffee, evenings with books and music and silence that no longer felt like abandonment. I joined a community class, pottery of all things. My hands learned to shape something that didn't need to be perfect to be whole. I made bowls that wobbled and cups with uneven rims. I loved them. They were proof that usefulness didn't require erasure. One afternoon, as I washed clay from my fingers, I caught my reflection in the studio mirror. I didn't look younger. I looked present. Rachel finalized her separation quietly. No public drama, no bitterness. I don't hate him, she told me. I just refused to disappear for him anymore. I smiled. That sentence felt like a legacy. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about the woman I had been, and the one who stood, the one who apologized, the one who believed love meant endurance. I wished I could tell her something. That sacrifice without boundaries is not virtue, it's erosion. That being needed is not the same as being loved. That sitting down at your own table is not selfish, it's survival. The fall happened, but it wasn't mine. And the quiet that followed wasn't emptiness. It was peace, earned, protected, and finally, mine. It took months for the truth to fully settle, not just for Mark, but for everyone else who had assumed the narrative was his to tell. At first, there were whispers, quiet murmurs at office parties, at yoga studios, even on social media. Did you know? Apparently she owns the house, the car, legally hers. People who had never acknowledged me before now glanced my way, some with curiosity, some with cautious admiration. But mostly they looked surprised. Surprise is funny. It's the first step in recognition. Recognition is the first step in respect. I didn't bask in it, that wasn't the point. I simply allowed myself to exist in the space I had earned. Rachel called one Saturday morning. "I finally feel like I can breathe," she said, her voice lighter than I had heard in years. "That's good," I said. "I mean it," she continued. "I've started a small business, something just for me, and I'm resting, really resting." I smiled, thinking of the nights she'd fallen asleep on my couch, worn and defeated. "You deserve that," I said softly. She laughed, a sound that carried both relief and pride. "And I wouldn't have believed it without your timing." I understood I didn't need to correct her. Sometimes timing is just patience in disguise. Mark predictably tried to regain control in quiet ways. Calls to my accountant, attempts at negotiation, quiet threats that failed before they left his lips. He hadn't anticipated the cold precision of years I had spent keeping everything in order. I wasn't reacting. I was prepared. Every document, every legal safeguard, every just in case he had ignored, it had waited for this moment, and I wielded them like armor. When I finally met him at the coffee shop again, I noticed how small he looked, not physically, but in presence. His carefully constructed perceived persona had cracks, and I realized he had been propped up all along by people who had loved him blindly. "You've changed," he said quietly. "No," I said. "I haven't changed. I've only stopped shrinking." That was the truth, and it was liberating. The house was sold. The car remained with Rachel. Financial accounts were secure. Mark learned the hard way that privilege without responsibility is fragile. And I learned something far more important. Power is not about aggression or loud displays. It's about clarity, boundaries, and the willingness to reclaim what is rightfully yours. I returned home one evening, my small apartment now filled with light from the setting sun. I opened the windows, letting the city noises float in. The smell of a peach cobbler cooling on the counter drifted through the air, a small pleasure I had ignored for decades. For the first time in my life, I felt a complete separation between duty and self, between love and self-erasure, between kindness and vulnerability to exploitation. I realized that self-love is not indulgence, it is survival. I also realized that boundaries, once drawn, are not walls. They are the frame of a life finally allowed to grow. I sat down, folded my hands over the table, and closed my eyes. The air smelled faintly of peaches and cinnamon. I could hear the faint hum of the city outside, and I smiled. Because the life I had carried alone for so long was finally mine, and I could sit at my table without apology, without expectation, and without fear. Sitting at my kitchen table, I often catch myself listening to silence in a way I never did before. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of it. The quiet that isn't waiting for someone else's voice to fill it. It's strange how the life you think you're living isn't always yours. You give and give and give until the weight of everyone else's expectations becomes heavier than your own heartbeat. You bend, fold, erase yourself, thinking that love requires sacrifice. It does not. What it requires is discernment, courage, boundaries. I think back to Thanksgiving, the day I stood holding a casserole, invisible among the laughter, the clinking glasses, the self-congratulations. At the time, I told myself it was normal, that family works in unspoken hierarchies, that love means enduring. I was wrong. Love is not enduring at the expense of yourself. Rachel, now flourishing, taught me something I hadn't realized I had forgotten, that others will mirror what you allow them to take. When you disappear for them, they assume absence is your nature, not their choice. But when you stand, clearly and without apology, they see what respect looks like. Mark, my son, learned the hard way that entitlement is fragile and that people who have been propped up by others cannot survive forever without consequence. That lesson, painful as it was necessary. Not for me, but for him. I have learned that true power is quiet. It does not roar. It does not demand attention. It acts with precision, clarity, and patience. It is knowing when to act and when to wait. It is the weight of a legal document, the click of a key, the decision to reclaim what is yours, and the ability to do so without malice. Peace is earned, not given. I often bake peach cobblers now, small indulgences that carry no expectation beyond pleasure. I sit at my table, cup of tea in hand, and watch the city move. Outside, life continues, people rushing, arguing, celebrating, failing. And inside, I am still. I exist, I am recognized, I am present. I've discovered that boundaries are not walls. They are the scaffolding that allows a life to grow without crumbling. They are the declaration that your heart is generous, yes, but not inexhaustible. That your love is real, but it does not erase your selfhood. That your time, your energy, your resources are precious, and you may choose where they go. I've also learned that self-love is a radical act, particularly when others have spent decades teaching you that giving without limit is the only measure of your worth. Self-love is setting limits, saying no, and watching the world adjust. It is a quiet revolution that does not need applause. Mark's fall was not my triumph, it was the natural consequence of his choices. My triumph is far subtler. It is in every morning I wake knowing that my life is mine, in every meal I cook for pleasure, every conversation I have without compromise, every quiet evening spent in reflection. I have learned finally that being needed is not the same as being loved, that standing alone does not make you lonely, it makes you sovereign, that power, dignity, and peace are not given, they are claimed, and claiming them is, perhaps, the most loving act of all. Because when you honor yourself, when you draw the lines that protect your heart, you teach others what it means to respect. And in doing so, you finally learn the truest moral of all. You cannot give what you do not protect. You cannot love yourself less to love someone more. And only by standing firmly in your own worth can the world learn to see it. I sip my tea and let the city hum around me. I am tired, yes, but full. I am alone, yes, but never lonely. I am free, finally, in every sense that matters. And I am grateful.